I'm Rebecca King Ferraro.
And I'm Michael Sean Breeden, and you're listening to Conversations on Dance. On today's episode of Conversations on Dance, we are joined by Chyrstyn Fentroy, principal ballerina with the Boston Ballet. We talked to Chyrstyn about how she built her work ethic during her training years, dancing under Virginia Johnson in the newly revived Dance Theater of Harlem, and what it was like to make the move to a larger company in the middle of her career. If you'd like to see Chyrstyn perform, stay tuned to the Boston Ballet website at bostonballet.org. Chyrstyn, thank you so much for joining us today. We've been trying to have you on for ages, and you've been so busy. Obviously, your career has been booming, so we're so glad that you've been busy in that way, but also very grateful that you have the time today to sit down and tell us about your life and journey. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I'm so happy to chat with you guys and to finally be here.
I know. We did have a back and forth on scheduling for a long time, so thanks for your patience.
I think over a year, right? So this is
It's been a long time.
As Taylor Swift might say, it's been a long time coming now. Okay, so anyway.
Michael's in Swiftie world.
Yeah, that's how she starts. Yeah, that's how she starts the tour. That's the first lyrics of the tour. So appropriate here as well.
Let's go.
Okay, so since it's your first interview with us, we always like to just go back to the tip top and hear just a little bit about how you first kind of fell in love with dance and what was the incentive towards actually moving towards classes.
Yeah, so I started dance because my parents are dancers. My mom is a ballet dancer and my dad was in commercial dance. My dad actually started dancing after my parents met, but they were at the studio all the time since I was born. So I think I started dance classes like to keep me busy so I didn't get in trouble. And then it became something that I really enjoyed. I really wasn't that into ballet at first. I was really into the competition dance world and like those kinds of things. But I fell in love with ballet when I went to my first summer intensive, which was the summer of my 18th birthday. And I just, once I was in New York by myself, for the first time, like somewhere on my own, taking care of myself, getting up, getting to the studio, doing the whole thing. And I just like fell in love with that grind sort of. And here we are.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. I mean, it makes sense. Like a lot of kids, ballet requires so much discipline. And especially as a child, you don't have the skill level to do the quote unquote fun things. So I think a lot of us could be like, okay, when is this gonna go somewhere? And then the summer program flip when you see all those kids, like everyone working towards a singular goal, and you've never been around as many people that are that singularly minded towards the goal of being a ballet dancer. That does really click for a lot of people. So I don't know, maybe you could talk a little bit more about that. Like once you came home from that summer, how did your vision for yourself as a dancer shift?
Yeah, I mean, the studio that I went to, that I grew up at and spent most of my childhood at, was more recreational when I was there. It's really more career driven now. Like they are creating so many fantastic ballet dancers. It's amazing. I went back and taught a master class and was just like, wow, everyone is so beautiful.
Oh, that's awesome.
Love that.
Yeah, but when I was there, it was more recreational. So I wasn't really exposed to other people my age that were career driven. And so when I was living in LA before I went to that summer intensive, I think I was more into like the commercial dance scene because that's more what's around you. Like,
right.
You have more exposure to that kind of thing with like Hollywood and like music videos and all that stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna do that. And when I went to New York, I think being around people that like all worked so hard and were focused on like one style of movement primarily, maybe had strengths in other ways. Like we had access to taking classes in other styles, which was also really fun. But being around people that like were all focused on like training this like way was so new to me. And it was like really inspiring, and it made me really consider what it would look like for me to be in that kind of space long term.
Mhm.
I also that summer I went to an ABT summer intensive that summer, and then I followed it with an Alvin Ailey summer intensive. And so because I was still kind of like trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and it had been suggested to me previously that I should consider Ailey. Can talk about that later, but so I wanted to give it a try, and I just Horton was not for me. But and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just like, movement speaks to people differently, and that wasn't my movement style. And I think it was like having both of those things contrasting that year really made me realize how much I could love ballet. So going back home after that, I like really dove in and started to like study a little bit harder. I wanted to spend a full year in New York. So the next year I ended up staying in New York and studying there for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. This interesting to me that you mentioned, because one of my questions, the next thing I was going to say was when you decided, to me, you have very obvious, easy ballet body. I think of you as such a ballerina. The things I've seen you in are very ballet, even if they're contemporary ballet, like increases, you have to have a rock solid classical ballet technique. And I've seen you do a beautiful dewdrop and things like that. So that's, I was wondering then when you switched, was it just like, oh, okay, this makes sense? Like you'd been kind of exploring other avenues, but once you went like more blinders on for ballet, was it just like, oh, this is what my body likes?
Absolutely not. No.
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 You're like so complimentary and sweet, but like as a dancer, obviously, often does. I don't necessarily agree with all that you're saying. No, it was not. It was not easy. It was a lot of work, a lot of self-criticism, which may be to an unhealthy degree, but just because I felt like I was so far behind, I kind of like developed this like obsession with like trying to perfect my body in ways that maybe weren't great. Like I can't change my bone structure and stuff like that. So no, it wasn't super easy, but I think what I fell in love with was like the constant pursuit of like something greater, the constant like you can always develop on something. And I also loved finding ways to be expressive in even like the most like structured and like boxed in type of movements sometimes, like repertoire wise and stuff like that. Like I loved trying to still have a voice and still be me in that space. And I think that is still true to today.
Yeah. So what were your first thoughts in terms of company life? So you're starting to see this dream that's in front of you. You're working on your technique. What is your plan to kind of get your career off the ground?
I had zero plans. So I went to Joffrey Ballet School for 2 years. And both years, because I was in New York, at the Joffrey School in New York, both years being in New York, you have access to like all of these open company auditions every year. So I did go to auditions and I had a lot of experiences, but I didn't really know what I was looking for because I didn't ever have exposure to like a big company life, or like I didn't go to a school, like a feeder school or like anything like that. And even at Joffrey, like it's separate. That school is separate from the Joffrey company. So there was not that like connection. So I didn't really know what I was looking for. I didn't know what the facilities were like places. I didn't know like what kind of rep different companies do. I was just kind of winging it and hoping someone liked me for a while. Yeah, especially that first year. But the second year that I was there and I was auditioning, I think I started to focus a little bit more. I think at that point I probably would have taken like an offer just about anywhere just to get started. But like, but I started to understand like who I was and like that voice of like wanting to be expressive and stuff like that, wanting to be a part of something larger than myself. I think that started to click a little bit more. I had a couple of experiences that kind of helped me understand my identity in dance when I was in school there. So I think I started to look for places that I felt like I could easily be at home. And I auditioned for several places, but Dance Theater of Harlem was the first company that I danced for. And I was a part of the rebirth of the company after their hiatus. And I was there for 5 seasons. And I remember that audition was like crazy because it was obviously like the first year the company was coming back. So there were a million people there
Right.
and they made so many cuts and the audition was so long and I was in school and like supporting myself pretty much financially. So I had one pair of point shoes and they were mush by the end. It was hilarious and awful. But I was invited to come back and take another class and then I got offered a contract. So that was my first like company experience. And I think that also helped shape what kind of movement I identified with within like the classical ballet realm.
Yeah.
That's so much exposure.
I want to touch on too. You said that because you were in New York, you were able to have access to all these auditions, but you also have access to seeing a lot of dance. Was that part of something that helped kind of inform you, helped you create this identity or understanding of who you are as a dancer?
Oddly, no. I mean, I did see a lot of dance when I was there, but I think I saw more dance once I started working professionally.
Yeah.
And I think that has to do partially because when I was in school, I was like training all day and then I was working in the evenings to like support myself there.
Yeah.
So my schedule was just, and like also weekends, I was working like birthday ballerina parties. So I was pretty busy and I didn't go out to see dance that much. And I remember like seeing things and wondering what it's like to be up like on a big stage, like with City Ballet or with ABT, but I don't remember feeling like super influenced by what I saw, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I understand
Until
that.
later.
I feel like I kind of had a similar experience. I guess it's like you see it and you're like, wow, this is cool. But then like once you've like been on that stage, like you have a different appreciation for what's happening. I guess I understand that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what were your years under Virginia like? And before you took the job at DTH, do you have any hesitations about being somewhere that it's the rebirth? So you knew the history of, it's this fabled ballet company, but it went under. Were you worried at all about, a repeat of that history? Like, what was the vibe going into your new job?
I mean, I think I was just elated that somebody wanted me.
Yeah.
Because I think like we face so much rejection that sometimes to like feel wanted, especially in such a small group, after seeing how many people were auditioning, it just felt really special. Working under Virginia was like, I think that was a really important part in my like artistic development, my time at DTH and working under her, because she has so much knowledge to offer, but she's very intellectual and artistic in how she gives that knowledge. So rehearsing with her was like really like brainy, and I remember like she would say things like, your dancing is orange and I need you to make it amber or something like that, and then it would leave you to like chew on what does that mean. But I love that kind of work, like diving in that way and not being like, yes, tell me to point my feet, but like also
Yeah.
I don't want to chew on stuff. So a lot of that, I also think that like when I was at Dance Theater of Harlem, I was given a lot of fantastic opportunities, maybe before I was ready, because I joined as like a fresh out of school baby, like core level. But I had this like hungry mentality and I really wanted to like push and work. I think that came from being behind in school. And so I would work and then I would be given opportunities that maybe I wasn't ready for, but then I had to be ready for them. So I like pushed myself further so that I would get there. And I think it helped me like develop faster, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting to just think about, well, hindsight being 2020. I'm fast forwarding in my brain to your time in Boston Ballet right now, where versatility is king. I think it's one of the most demanding reps, like the way that you have to go. It's very much expected from the top that you excel in everything. There aren't really specialists, and it's just very demanding in that way.
Yeah.
But, you rewind to your time where you felt like you were behind, which, at the time is, of course, something you don't want to want to be experiencing, but it teaches you how to be this really driven hard worker. And then you're working to put yourself through school, which has this other facet of you then appreciating what you're doing and knowing why you have to work this hard. So it's like it's building the character that you are today. And even in that moment, you probably felt rough a lot of the time, but it's
Mhm.
actually really beautiful to see this trajectory.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I definitely felt rough at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to do all of that. So, what was some of the rep that you were dancing at DTH? Because also their repertoire is so wonderful. So, when you're saying it made you rise to the occasion, I can understand why.
Yeah. So DTH is primarily a touring company, so and quite small. So when I was in the company, the size of the company ranged between 12 and 18 dancers.
Mhm.
So we never did any full lengths, but we would do excerpts of things. Full length classicals, I mean. But
Right.
we did like my first year, I was doing Black Swan Pas de Deux, which was like crazy hard for me because I didn't have a super strong classical training from from when most people start their super strong classical training.
Right.
Right.
We did some balancing work, so we did Agon. I did second pas de trois there, and the solo lady. I did Chai Pa. We also did an Alvin Ailey ballet, The Lark Ascending. We did that on point, which was really cool.
Mm.
Um, and Robert Garland Ballet's Return, the one that's James Brown and Aretha Franklin that everyone loves.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Poetry would come and choreograph. We oftentimes had people come and create works on us. So like every year, I think we had someone come in and set a ballet.
Mhm.
Awesome.
So you've already mentioned that, you would see City Ballet and ABT, and while the fantasy wasn't necessarily being in those companies, you did have a seed of wanting to be in a big company or perform on a stage of that scale and productions like that. So at what point did you decide that was a dream that you really wanted to push for? And how did you kind of take that next step?
Yeah, I think when I got to a point at DTH where I was, please forgive my dog bark.
Puppies. Puppy.
That's okay. They want your attention.
They do. Um, I think when I got to a point that I felt like I was doing a lot of primarily, if not only, principal roles there, which was
Mhm.
fantastic, and I'm so grateful for. I wanted to experience the other thing, like I wanted to experience what it was like to be in a real corps de ballet.
Mhm.
And I also was reaching an age where I felt like if I didn't leap now, I would lose the opportunity to.
Right.
And so I started to this is when I started to really look at what kinds of companies I wanted to dance for, because then I understood myself a little bit better. Um, and so I started looking at like the repertoire of other companies. And I really think that Boston Ballet has one of the most diverse repertoires. And I just found it really interesting that they did full length classical ballets, but they also did Killian and they also did Forsyth and they also, they have all of these like other things that are really different than the classical stuff.
Right.
So I shot my shot, and I didn't think they were going to respond to my email because it took a really long time, like months. And
Oh,
auditions,
months? Oh, my
these have
God.
had like passed. It was like April when they responded to my
Oh,
email.
wow.
And I auditioned actually in May, like mid-May, and was offered a corps de ballet contract. So I was so thrilled, terrified. I was so scared, but thrilled to see what that felt like to be on a stage of like with 50 people or whatever. And
Mhm.
what a cool feeling it was, especially that first year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it must have felt like getting thrown into the deep end because, like I said, the range of the repertoire and then the expectation that one can excel in every avenue. And what's funny to me is that I was probably there your first week of work, actually. Because I remember it was Patricia Delgado was staging Increases, and picked you to be in the first cast right away. So that's your first year. There are only four women in the ballet, and you got picked to be in the first cast. And I remember immediately asking her who she was, who you were rather, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, she's fabulous, isn't she? Like you're just gonna love her. She's gonna do so well here." So that was, just within your first week, you were already obviously making a big impression. So, but what was your impression like when you got that casting? Where you're like, "Oh crap!" Like I have to really like, what happened to my being in a group
Core
of 50
dreams.
I
people?
know. Well, actually, I'll tell you the story of my very first performance at Boston Ballet. The very first one was a Yorma Elo ballet called Sibelius Fifth Symphony, and I was second cast everything that I was learning or like understudy, and I was second cast of a corps ballet role, which I was like, if I do a show, I'm going to do that, and I was also learning one of the principal women, but I was like, that'll never happen. It's fine. Baby steps. And I actually really didn't think that I was going to perform. But opening night, I was sitting in the audience with my now fiance watching, and the principal dancer that I was learning didn't come on stage for an entrance. And I was like, all of the blood drained out of me.
Oh.
And she came on later, but it was different. Like you could tell something had changed. And
Mhm.
so there was like the opening night, like kind of party thing that they do, like a meet and greet kind of thing. And I was there, and I had the rehearsal directors came up to me and were like, so you ready? And the next show was a matinee. So I had my first rehearsal 30 minutes before the show, like, and then that was really being thrown into the deep end, because I had never like done a in space rehearsal of that part. So
Whenever I hear these stories, it gives me anxiety. Just like what was that night like? You were like not sleeping. We're
Oh my
going
God.
over the steps incessantly, I'm sure.
yeah, I did not sleep. I was so nervous, but it was actually, I think being at DTH prepared me for that moment because being in such a small company, when things happen, you just kind of you jump in and you kind of like learn everyone's part. So I was like kind of prepared. I had an incident at Dance Theater of Harlem where someone got like violently ill as the curtain went up on a ballet, and I didn't know their part, and I was like backstage with a laptop watching them dance, running out doing the steps, coming back with the
No.
laptop, like
Wow.
so I think I was like kind of prepared for
Yeah, that's amazing experience for something like that. So what did it feel like then when you were kind of doing some of these core roles? I assume that you did in fact do some of
Mhm.
them. Did you feel, because it is such a unique challenge to dance within a core, to be watching where everyone is, to be in line. It's like a whole different element. So was that something that you adjusted to well, or did you feel kind of like behind in that arena?
I think I adjusted to it pretty well. One, because I wasn't like super young anymore.
Right.
And because when I was at Dance Theater of Harlem, we traveled so much and performed on so many different stages that you have to be like really aware and adapt really quickly to different
Mhm.
spaces and to different spacing. So I think that helped me to like be more aware of those things. Um,
Yeah, that makes a lot of
really
sense.
enjoyed it. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed being the core. Yeah, I think it was like living a dream, like I always had this like fairy tale idea of like what it looks like to just like
Mhm.
stand on the side of the stage and watch people dance on the side of the stage. And
Hmm.
yeah,
To
it
look
was
across the stage
Wow.
and see your friends. It feels like,
yeah,
dancing with your friends. Yeah.
yeah, laughing at things, trying
Yeah.
not to laugh on stage. I almost got kicked in the face by someone once that was doing a variation. I just like leaned back and then blew straight back up, and all of us were just cackling.
Oh, well, I hope you enjoyed it while it lasted, Diva, because it was over fast. You did a lot of really big things that first year. I mean, I didn't get to see it, but I remember being jealous of my friends in Boston. You did Siren. Was that your first year or shortly?
My first year. I think that was my
I
first
think
year.
it was your first year. A lot of really big opportunities came your way. Um, so. I guess, yeah, going back to this idea of just how versatile you have to be in the company. Like, did you find that sort of like um, jarring, or did you feel like DTH had prepared you for that?
As far as dancing, both
As,
for
as
ballet.
far as, yeah, like doing like Giselle one day, and then, okay, next week is Yorma week, and then next on the rehearsal
Right.
schedule, like, Justin and Patricia come, and then, that sort of thing. Like, was that hard on your body at all?
I don't think so. I think again, like the DTH thing. I guess I'm really grateful for that time in my life.
Yeah.
Because we would do performances where everything was like smaller repertoire. So it was like I would do Black Swan and then I would do the James Brown ballet and then
Right.
I would do a Nacho Duato ballet that's barefoot,
Sure.
all in the same program, you know?
Right.
So I was kind of used to that, like tugging in either direction in the same night.
Right.
So doing that year, we actually did a lot of like alternating weeks of performances at Boston Ballet. We don't do that so much anymore, but we would do. I remember we did Romeo and Juliet, and then we had like a Forsyth program. I think it was the Forsyth program. It was like a contemporary bill, a more contemporary bill, and we alternated them every other week.
Ooh,
And
that's tough.
I thought it was really fun.
Oh, okay, good. I love that. I love to hear that.
I do think it is tough. It keeps you have to be on like, you have to stay alert and like keep your brain on top of things, but it keeps it fresh, I think.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. Sometimes it's just like hard. It is very hard. I think that sometimes audience members might not realize quite the difference between on your body going from like ballet being up, and then trying to be down, and then like the different way you have to warm up, the different way you need to take care of your body after. There's just so many elements to that, you know, or maybe that's just me being in like internalized. Maybe for you, it didn't feel that way.
I agree. I think, especially the older that I get, the more my body needs to warm up in different ways for different kinds of reps. So, yeah.
Maybe that was the key. Maybe that's what I needed to be doing, Rebecca.
Yeah, you need to do a modern warm up. You can't do tondus to do.
I did. I was like,
Taylor.
I don't know anything else. I would just like be like, okay, I guess I'll do my Susie Pilar bar again. Yeah. Okay, so but then, the promotions came quickly. You felt supported then by your director that you see this person has a vision for you where you're going. But I guess how did you handle all that personally? Was it a surprise, or did it feel like, you know what, I worked so hard and it's merited this? Like was going through your mind as the parts kept coming?
Specifically speaking to like promotions, I was surprised every single time. I mean, I know that I worked hard, but I think I've always had this tendency to only see the strengths in other people and only see the weaknesses in myself. So I think
Don't
looking
we
around,
all, I feel.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. The dancer thing.
Yeah. But I think that made me unable to see kind of like where I stand structurally. And I think I always have this like voice in the back of my head that tells me that I'm like kind of an imposter and like it's all going to slip away very quickly. So I think that voice was present a lot of the time. So it was always kind of a surprise. And with like the rep, especially like the first couple of years, I was just like every time like, this is awesome.
Oh.
Yeah. Like I remember when Nutcracker casting went up the first year that I was there and I was learning Dewdrop, I was like literally just jaw to the floor, looking side to side. Like, is anybody seeing this? Like, of course, everyone that had been here was like, okay. But,
I love that.
yeah.
And then I wonder too, because you got promoted to principal in 2022. Is that right? So I wonder what that felt like, because after the pandemic, did you think like, oh, maybe that might kind of pause my possibility of becoming a principal? I just like that time must have been so challenging for dancers.
I think before the pandemic, being a principal dancer wasn't really something that was like, I thought was like part of my trajectory. I kind of thought that I was going to be one of those people that like thrived as a soloist, and was comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to be on stage at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so the pandemic was challenging, but for me, the pandemic was a silver lining because I had been dealing with an injury for a while that was kind of progressing and getting worse. And it gave me the space to have surgery without FOMO.
Hmm.
So I was able to do that, and I wasn't even thinking about like what the future of my career might look like at the ballet at that time. I just
Mhm.
thought I was going to work to get back to where I was, and hopefully I get there. And then, guys, shush. Dogs. And then when it came to actually starting to come back, I felt like because it had been so long, I had to turn on that like super work hard hat
Hmm.
Yeah.
space, whatever,
Yeah.
again. And I think Miko saw that when we were working on our one of our like classical virtual programs. I think is when he started to really start to see me in a principal mindset, because we have annual evaluation meetings mid-season, and he had mentioned it to me that like, oh, you're dancing kind of like more like a principal, and I saw it in you doing Black Swan, which thank you DTH again for giving me
Yes.
in that. And then the year we came back, yeah, I again I had this this like headspace turned on that I just wanted to be happy. I wanted to love myself in my movement, and to like try to block out the noise, because there is a lot of noise oftentimes when you're a heady person and you're in ballet.
Hmm.
Um, I wanted to block out the noise, and I had an opportunity to do Apollo that year at the beginning of the season, and go to LA to film it at the Hollywood Bowl, and I'm from LA, and I hadn't been home in so long because I don't have any family that lives there anymore, and I think it sparked it, like energized me, and it's re-sparked like my joy, if you will,
Yeah.
and I think that light kind of continued to shine through until Nutcracker season, and that's when I got promoted to principal mid-season. So
Well, super well deserved. I'm a massive fan, and I know that with Rebecca I go every year to see Nutcracker in Boston with Kate Penner.
oh, nice.
And yeah, she's a good friend of ours, friend of the pod. And
Yeah.
we're always like, Rebecca, you need to be here. You need to see
Mhm.
Chyrstyn, you know,
Oh.
you know.
I was creeping on
Uh,
your Instagram before though, and I was sending Michael videos. There was this one particular video of you doing turns that were so controlled and gorgeous and technically perfect.
Oh, thank you.
I was
I'll
like,
take the compliment.
can we talk a little bit about the injury that you've been dealing with now? We're so sorry that you have been dealing with one. I think it's something that we like to talk about on the podcast because it's an important part of what we deal with as dancers.
Yeah. So I got injured in September. I mean, I think it was something that was kind of brewing for a while, but I got injured in September. I performed through the injury in October, and then I haven't danced since the end of October, and it is now February. Um, so I had a herniated disc at my C6, C7 in my neck, so the base of my neck and the top of my upper back. But um, and it was pressing on my nerves that go down the right side of my body, so I was losing feeling in my right arm, and every time I would turn quickly, it would feel like white noise all the way through my hand, and it kind of like felt like an electric shock and fire and numbness all at the same time. It was really strange, really jarring. I like couldn't move my head this way. And I just didn't know what it was. I thought it started as a really bad muscle spasm.
Yeah.
Just went a little too hard in rehearsal. I remember the rehearsal very vividly. So,
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
um, and yeah, it started as a spasm, didn't really know what it was, and turned out I had a herniated disc, and I had a couple of injections done because we thought it was going to be the solution. I did a round of steroids as well, of oral steroids as well. And they like helped, the steroids helped me get through the shows, but
Yeah.
but the injections helped the first one, but the second one didn't improve it at all. And it just got to the point where it was like, well, we can keep waiting, or we can do surgery. So I ended up actually having surgery on my neck 3.5 weeks ago. And I feel a lot better. I feel really great. And I'm working my way back to going back in the studio. But it's been challenging because this is the first injury that's taken me out of a performance season.
Yeah.
And I in life in general, I struggle with my mental health, and a lot of times it has to do with how I'm feeling in my career as well. Like I think
Yeah.
that definitely influences that. So I had a lot of ups and downs through the period, especially at the beginning, because I didn't want to go in the studio. I didn't want to be on Instagram. I didn't want to see anything because I just felt bad. um,
Really?
I'm really, really disappointed. I had personal goals that I wanted to accomplish, and we have so many like really awesome full lengths. I'm like the poster of Cinderella, and I was really looking forward to dancing Cinderella. Like I doing
Wow.
a full length. I've only done one full length, one show, and I want to do it again. Like
Yeah.
Right, right.
so, a lot of my like personal goals kind of had to be put aside, but I just kind of tried to I actually thought about the pandemic a lot because of how little access we had to moving. So it was kind of just like keep your body lubricated and like hopefully on the other end you'll be okay. So I'm trying to remind myself that I was okay after that, and coming back, I will continue to be okay. But yeah.
Your body
Course.
remembers, it's like it's all in there.
Mm-hmm.
It knows everything it needs to do, and it will come back better and stronger than before.
Yeah, I'm really lucky that we have a really fantastic team at Boston Ballet as well that like gives me access to some of the best doctors in Boston. So I feel really well supported. Yeah.
I'm glad the surgery helped.
Yeah. I'm so happy to be feeling better. I can
Yeah.
turn my head right and left real
There you
fast.
go.
I can look up.
Wow.
As the kids might say, the neck is necking.
The neck is necking.
Yeah, it looks very free and comfortable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
So you're on your way back. Are there things that you have, either maybe something you might be able to make at the end of the season, or looking forward into the future, even just a theoretical season? What sort of goals, you mentioned that you'd really like to do a full length again. So you've only had one prior opportunity, but what sorts of things do you see yourself or hope that you can conquer within the next 5-10 years?
I would love to dance another full length, just because I think the challenge or the task of taking an audience from the beginning to the end of a story and having that wait is like so exciting and like, a fun thing to dive into. So I hope I get the opportunity to do that again. I oftentimes don't set major goals for myself. I really try to just like work hard in the spaces that I've been given. As far as like things that might be outside of dance, I have taken a liking to staging ballets. So I'm really interested in that process and like learning more about that so that I can, when it's time for me to transition out of dance, I can maybe go into that space. For this season, I'm really looking forward to dancing a couple of ballets that we've already done. Bella Figura is one of them. I am silly, but like I wasn't super happy with how I danced it last time, so I'm really excited to try again. I'm also nervous because it's neck. The part that I have is neck heavy and right arm heavy. So, but I think I'll be strong enough to do it. We're dancing another Forsyth ballet that we've done before. It's Blake Works 3, which is also known as the Bar Project, that Tyler Peck did. They released during the pandemic. And that is one of the hardest things I've ever done in flat shoes. It's exhausting. She never stops, and it's so fast. But I love music. I love music being a part of my body, and I love trying to find different ways to hear it and like show it. So I'm really excited to do that again. And we're also going to Paris. So hopefully I'm on that cast list to go to Paris.
Yes, I'm sure you will be.
Hint, hint, if anyone's listening.
Is that in the summer?
It's at the end of the season. It's like end of May.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well,
You're on the way. You're on the way. We can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they said like 3 weeks and I should be able to go back to rehearsal. So I'm almost there.
You're almost there. Beautiful.
Yay, that's great.
Well, everyone in the Boston area or Paris hopefully. We obviously encourage them to all come see you perform. Like I said, I'm a huge fan. And I love that you mentioned how music makes you tick, because I think that when I saw you do Dewdrop, I felt like you were possessed by the spirit of Tchaikovsky. I was very, yeah, I thought it was, a number of things I loved about your performance, but I think what made you most interesting and arresting as a performer was that you were very musical. So we'd love to see that. That's our favorite quality in a dancer.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, thank you so much, and we wish you a really speedy recovery. And we're so glad we got to talk to you, and we're sure that we'll have you on again.
I hope so. Can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Conversations on Dance is part of the ACAST Creator Network. For more information, visit conversationsondancepod.com.